Hello students, today we will study a very important work of American literature. It is called Nature. Literature has been blessed with numerous great thinkers and academics who have influenced the development of societies. The intellectual and philosophical development of man has been considerably attributable to these people who had the mettle to advocate their principles and personal ideologies. Ralph Waldo Emerson has been one of these commendable men. Emerson was born on May 25, 1803 in Boston, in America. He belonged to the family of a long line of clergymen. As his pastor father died when Emerson was only 8 years old, his mother and aunt brought him up with great difficulty. He was profoundly influenced by his aunt, whose acute critical intelligence would have a lifelong influence on Emerson. He studied in Boston Latin School so that he too could be qualified to become a clergyman. He established a reputation as sound philosopher and original thinker, orator, and author. He became famous as the Sage of Concord, a revered mystic who denied the existence of evil. His ideas were radical and a great inspiration for the young generation. Emerson died of pneumonia on April 27, 1882. To this day, Emerson remains a directing force in the school of American thought opposed to a materialism that is divorced from the uses of life and from the necessities of healthy human personality. Nature is an essay written by Emerson, published anonymously in 1836. Nature contains, in brief, the whole substance of his thought. It is in this essay that the foundation of transcendentalism is put forth. It is a belief system that espouses a non-traditional appreciation of nature. Transcendentalism suggests that divinity diffuses all nature and speaks to the notion that we can only understand reality through studying nature. A visit to the National Museum of Natural History in Paris inspired a set of lectures delivered in Boston, and subsequently the ideas led to the publication of the essay called Nature. Within this essay, Emerson divides nature into 4 usages: commodity, beauty, language, and discipline. These distinctions define the ways by which humans use nature for their 1. Basic needs, 2. Their desire for delight, 3. Their communication with one another, and 4. Their understanding of the world. Emerson followed the success of this essay with a famous speech entitled The American Scholar. These 2 works laid the foundation for both his new philosophy and his literary career. Now, I will tell you the summary of this essay. In Nature, Emerson lays out a problem that he attempts to solve throughout the essay: that humans do not fully accept nature's beauty and all that it has to offer. According to Emerson, people are distracted by the world around them. Nature gives to humans, but humans do not reciprocate. Emerson breaks his essay into 8 sections, namely nature, commodity, beauty, language, discipline, idealism, spirit, and prospects. Each of these shades a different perspective on the relationship between humans and nature. According to Emerson, humans must take themselves away from society's flaws and distractions in order to experience the wholeness with nature for which they are naturally suited. Emerson believes that solitude is the only way humans can fully adhere to what nature has to offer. Reflecting upon this idea of solitude and man's search for it, Emerson states, here I will quote from him, "To go into solitude, a man needs to retire as much from his chamber as from society. I am not solitary whilst I read and write, though nobody is with me. But if a man would be alone, let him look at the stars." Unquote. Clearly, a person must allow nature to take him away, as society can destroy man's wholeness. Nature and human beings must create a reciprocal relationship. He says, nature in its ministry to man is not the material, but is also the process and the result. All the parts incessantly work into each other's hands for the profit of man. The wind sows the seed, the sun evaporates the sea, the wind blows the vapor to the field, the ice on the other side of the planet condenses rain on this. The rain feeds the plant feeds the animal, and thus the endless circulations of the divine charity nourish man. Hence, nature and humans need each other to be beneficial. This relationship that Emerson depicts is somewhat spiritual. Humans must recognize the spirit of nature and accept it as the universal being. He says, nature is not fixed but fluid. Spirit alters, molds, makes it. The immobility or brutality of nature is the absence of spirit. To pure spirit, it is fluid, it is volatile, it is obedient. Emerson explains that nature is not fixed or fluid to a pure spirit, nature is everything. Although the essay is highly metaphorical, it creates a different perspective towards one's view of nature. Now we will discuss the crisis of the age which Emerson refers to. Emerson's commitment to idealism inspires the complaint that opens the essay. He says, our age is retrospective. It builds the sepulchres of the fathers. It writes biographies, histories, and criticism. Unquote. It wastes its intellectual substance honoring and studying past expressions of spirit. All such expressions are limited and defective because in the act of expressing itself, the pure idea becomes subject to time and space. The compromises of culture, the idiosyncrasies of fashion, linguistic inadequacies and stylistic conventions, failures in skill and flaws in temperament. Emerson never objected to truly creative reinterpretations of the past, to past philosophy or literature being born anew through one's rethinking and mentally rewriting it. In such encounters, the mind of the present, far from being dominated by the past, actually puts the past in its date. What Emerson condemned in the opening of the essay was the mind of the present succumbing to the burden of history, to a sense of historical belatedness that devalues the present, discourages originality, and casts doubt on the individual's potential as a newborn bard of the spirit. He wanted his age to escape from spiritually impoverishing retrospection and be reawakened to a sense of its own responsibility to spirit. A means to this end is men and women being reconnected with their own direct experience of spirit in nature. Emerson therefore invokes the natural world, nature A, as an antidote to the world of tradition and culture, which he calls nature B. Like spirit, nature A is always now. He says, the sun shines today also. As an American of his generation, Emerson also regarded appreciation of nature A as a safeguard against deflection from a national cultural vocation by the example of a strongly European nature B. Nature A was a great national asset, defining a new Eden. Emerson, in the introduction and the first chapter of this essay, stresses therefore the need to be sensitive to the miracle that is nature A, a miracle that should lose none of its enchantment by its pervasiveness. Indeed, the invariable mark of wisdom is to see the miraculous in the common. The content and quality of such seeing, however, depend not upon nature, but upon the self, because what we are, that only can we see. Now, we will discuss spirituality as a major theme in this essay. Emerson refers to nature as the universal being. He believed that there was a spiritual sense of the natural world around him. Depicting this sense of universal being, Emerson states, I quote here, "The aspect of nature is devout. Like the figure of Jesus, she stands with bended head and hands folded upon the breast. The happiest man is he who learns from nature the lesson of worship." Unquote. Emerson clearly depicts that everything must be spiritual and moral, in which there should be a relationship of goodness between nature and humans. In the first chapter, he says, I will quote here, "In the woods we return to reason and faith. There I feel that nothing can befall me in life, no disgrace, no calamity which nature cannot repair. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egoism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing, I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am a part or particle of God." Unquote. Emerson wants us to realize that we are a part of God. We are a transparent eyeball that sees everything. We are an intricate part of a bigger design, and only in nature can one realize this. It is only in nature that we are left with nothing but faith. Faith that we will forever be protected, whether it is by God or by nature. Nature tends to give us a sense of peace and tranquility that can only come from God. In the third chapter, he says, again I quote here, "The presence of a higher, namely of the spiritual element, is essential to its perfection. The high and divine beauty can be loved when it is combined with the human will. Beauty is the mark God sets upon virtue. Every natural action is graceful." Again, we are a part of God. Everything we do or that is done in nature has beauty and grace. simply because it all comes from God. We are perfect because God is present in our lives. The combination of our will and God's love make us beautiful. There is not a thing in life that is ugly to God. Without God in our lives, we are nothing. Emerson emphasizes throughout the essay to not only find ourselves through nature, but also realize that we are a portion of God. We are a part of God. Now we will discuss the themes of reason and understanding. From the beginning to the end of the essay, Emerson stresses the particular importance of the intuitive type of comprehension, which he calls reason. Reason is required to penetrate the universal laws and the divine mind. At the beginning of the introduction, he calls for poetry and philosophy of insight and a religion by revelation. His first references to intuition in the essay. Reason is linked with spiritual truth, understanding with the laws of nature. Because nature is a kind of manual for spiritualization, reason holds a higher place in it than understanding. Although understanding is essential for the perception of material laws and in its application promotes a progressively broader vision, it does not lead man to God. In Beauty and Language, Emerson examines reason's revelation to man of the larger picture behind the multiplicity of details in the material world. In Beauty, he describes artistic creativity as the extreme love of and response to natural beauty. Art is similar to the comprehension of universal law, the ultimate goal advocated in the essay. In Language, he identifies reason as the faculty that connects spirit with the universal soul itself. This universal soul he calls reason. Reason, which imparts vision to the absolute, is thus presented more as God's reaching out into man than as an active capacity solely within man. In Prospects, Emerson implores his readers to trust in reason as a means of approaching universal truth. He writes of morning knowledge as the knowledge of God, as opposed to evening knowledge or the knowledge of man. Emerson puts forward examples of intuition at work, the traditions of miracles, the life of Jesus, animal magnetism, which we call hypnosis, prayer, eloquence, self-healing, and the wisdom of children. In Idealism, Emerson asserts that intuition works against acceptance of concrete reality as ultimate reality, thereby promoting spiritualization. Emerson explores the difference between understanding and reason. Both serve to instruct man. However, understanding is tied to matter and leads to common sense rather than to the broadest vision. Reason is essential to transport man out of the material world into the spiritual. Reason provides perception of God's creation and a direct link with God, and reinforces the divine within man. It bestows on man an exalted status in the world, and in man's identification with God, his elevation through vision underlies Emerson's sense of nature as a tool for human development. Man is second only to God in the universal scheme. The material world exists for him. Now we will discuss the accessibility of nature to mankind. The essay expresses Emerson's belief that each individual must develop a personal understanding of the universe. Emerson makes clear in the introduction that men should break away from reliance on second-hand information, upon the wisdom of the past, upon inherited and institutionalized knowledge. The foregoing generations beheld God and nature face to face. We through their eyes. Why should not we also enjoy an original relation with the universe? Why should not we have a poetry and philosophy of insight and not of tradition, and a religion by revelation to us and not the history of theirs? According to Emerson, people in the past had an intimate and immediate relationship with God and nature, and arrived at their own understanding of the universe. All the basic elements that they required to do so exist at every moment in time. Emerson continues in the introduction, "The sun shines today also. There is more wool and flax in the fields. There are new lands, new men, new thoughts. Let us demand our own works and laws and worship." Emerson's rejection of received wisdom is reinforced by his repeated references throughout this essay to perception of familiar things, to seeing things anew. For Emerson, each moment provides an opportunity to learn from nature and to approach an understanding of universal order through it. The importance of the present moment, of spontaneous and dynamic interactions with the universe, of the possibilities of the here and now, render past observations and schemes irrelevant. Emerson focuses on the accessibility of the laws of the universe to every individual through a combination of nature and his own inner processes. In language, for example, he states that the relation between spirit and matter is not fancied by some poet, but stands in the will of God, and so is free to be known by all men. In his discussion of intellectual science in Idealism, he writes that all men are capable of being raised by piety or by passion into higher realms of thought. And at the end of the essay, in Prospects, he exhorts, "Know then that the world exists for you is the phenomenon perfect. Each man is capable of using his natural world to achieve spiritual understanding. Just as men in the past explored universal relations for themselves, so may each of us, great and small, in the present. All that Adam had, all that Caesar could, you have and can do." Here we come to the end of our discussion of Emerson's great essay, Nature. I hope all of you have understood this quite well. Thank you.